Hello everyone, this is Pulkit, the history faculty at the Vedanta IS Academy. So I welcome you all to the new module on the world history, and today's topic would be Introduction to World History, right? So we will be doing a module on world history as to what exactly the events which occurred in the world which led to the definition of the modern world, which led to the formation of the things which we are seeing in the present times, right? So that will be the basic idea which we are going to do in this introduction to the world history, right? But before we progress, एक confusion students को हमेशा ये रहता है कि world history जो है, whether it comes in the prelims exam or whether it only comes in the mains exam, right? So I'll just clarify that particular position by writing something that it is asked only in mains examination. Only in mains examination. That is the whole idea which we need to understand. First of all, when we are talking about the world history, that it is only asked in the mains exam, right? Second important cheez here, for the last 2 or 3 years, right? So there's a particular pattern which we observe in the UPSC mains examination regarding the world history, और वो ये pattern है that the UPSC has reduced the number of questions for world history from 2 to 1, right? Now approximately one question comes from this, 1 or 2 question comes from this part, right? So 1 is the trend for the last 3 years. Before that we had 2 questions. So sometimes people tend to ignore world history, and that is the biggest mistake, right? वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री की वेटेज एग्जाम के अंदर कम हो सकती है, बट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री एज अ सब्जेक्ट इज समथिंग विच इज नॉट ओनली यूजफुल फॉर दिस वन क्वेश्चन इन द मेंस एग्जामिनेशन इन द जीएस पेपर 2, but it is also very helpful in various disciplines. Like world history helps you understand the processes, the things in polity, right? So that is a very interesting thing which we need to understand, right? Polity के questions हैं, then governance के question हैं. They are actually kind of, their background is actually related to the world history. Like for example, there occurred an event in 1783, American Revolution, right? So America got independence in 1783. And after that, it wrote the first constitution in the world. So America became actually the first democratic government in the world. That is why it is known as the oldest democracy in the world, right? So that particular question, so that particular making of constitution was also a source of inspiration for the making of Indian constitution later on, right? So basically world history क्या करती है, जो भी event हम present में पढ़ रहे हैं उसका background जानने में world history is very helpful. That is something which we need to understand when we are talking about world history. World history सिर्फ polity governance के लिए नहीं है. World history is also very helpful in understanding the concepts of modern India, right? So if you people remember when we were doing the initial parts of modern India, and when we were talking about the Carnatic wars in India, that is from 1740s until the 1760s, right? तो Carnatic war का जो background है, that was the imperial rivalry between the French and the British, right? Their kind of conflict in North America and other parts of the world promoted this conflict in India also in the form of कर्नाटिक वॉर्स. जब तक हमें ये बैकग्राउंड एग्जैक्टली समझ में नहीं आएगा, so we will not be able to grasp the ideas of modern history as well. So therefore world history is a very very important topic for the UPSC examination for its weightage across all the subjects of the UPSC examination, right? तो ये एक सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग आइडिया है, right? अब हम चलते हैं कि एग्जैक्टली हमें इसके लिए कौन सी बुक रेफर करनी है, right? ओके, बुक्स नीडेड, राइट? ज्यादा कुछ हमें इसमें पढ़ना नहीं है. इंस्टेड ऑफ रीडिंग बुक्स, आई विल सजेस्ट यू सम बेसिक बुक्स, but instead of reading books as we go along every chapter, every topic of world history, I will tell you to watch a documentary or any important movie. उससे क्या होगा कि that you will get a sense कि visual sense कि हाँ ये चीजें ऐसे हो रही हैं, ये चीजें ऐसे नहीं हो रही हैं. For example, I take this World War II or World War I, right? मैं पढ़ा रहा हूँ, I'll teach you, that's my duty. बट आपको पढ़ाने के साथ साथ आपको थोड़ा आइडिया लग जाएगा. When you watch a movie on World War II, so that will enhance your learning system. There's a movie on Netflix which is known as World War II in color, right? If you watch that particular movie, तो उससे होगा क्या? That is going to help you in understanding कि वर्ल्ड वॉर सेकेंड स्टार्ट कैसे हुआ, उसके बीच में क्या हो रहा है, एंड व्हाट वर द कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस ऑफ द वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री, राइट? तो ये सब चीजें हैं विच वी नीड टू डू फॉर द वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री. तो वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री इज द मोस्ट इंटरेस्टिंग टॉपिक. वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री इज नॉट वेरी बोरिंग like other parts of history. World history is the most interesting, most fascinating form of history. कि exactly जापान को ऐसा क्या हुआ अचानक से, भाई चलो उठते हैं पर्ल हार्बर पे अटैक करते हैं in 1941, and then US in retaliation attacks Hiroshima and Nagasaki just to test the newly made atomic bombs, right? So this is how exactly World War II, the ideas of Russian Revolution, Lenin, right? What happened to Lenin? Lenin is a very very interesting idea. Like I just love to read his ideology. Lenin, then your Stalin, all these people, like they are very very interesting people to actually read, right? Then we are going to study about World War I. बहुत सारे interesting topics हैं which we are going to cover in this particular module on world history. Because it is a module on the mains examination, तो इसमें हम क्या करने वाले हैं? From tomorrow onwards, today is the introductory class. From tomorrow onwards, as we come to the first topic, we are also going to discuss a question, right? I am also going to give you a question every day on that particular topic. I am going to give you 2 or 3 questions on that particular topic. Now that will be your task to select any one question or 2 questions depending upon your will, and then write an answer on that, and then I am going to give you my feedback, right? So that will be the modus operandi in the world history, right? तो ये एक सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग आइडिया है when we talk about the world history. और जो आजकल पैटर्न है वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री का क्वेश्चन पेपर में, in the UPSC examination question paper, वो एक सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग पैटर्न ये है that they try and connect the events of world history with that of Indian history, right? Indian events को और world events को वो साथ में मिला देते हैं. Like for example, listen to this question. Very very interesting question. Question was once asked in the exam. ऐसे था, with the disintegration of USSR in 1991, with the disintegration of the USSR in 1991, the world got opened to a new possibility. The world got opened to a new possibility, full stop. Also during the same time, Indian society, economy, polity, that started to open up. right, that started to open up, explain, right? So we are now discussing two things in this particular question. First, the disintegration of USSR, and then the 1991 economic policies, right, propagated by Dr. Manmohan Singh, right? So that is how exactly we need to see कि UPSC के अंदर questions कैसे पूछे जाते हैं, right? So this particular module will be based upon कि UPSC की requirements, right? So सबसे पहले देख लेते हैं what books we need for the examination. ज़्यादा burden नहीं करूँगा आपको. You will be only have to read very basic books for this. Class 9th and 10th NCERT, right? Class 9th and 10th NCERT are more than sufficient for this world history module. साथ साथ में क्या है, what I'll also do is, because तो थोड़ा mailing वाला system है notes का, that is becoming very difficult. So what we have planned is, like I've already given the American Revolution के notes, which we are going to start tomorrow. So what we are going to do is, we are going to actually put up these notes on the website, and after putting those notes on the website, you people can actually access them on your own whenever you want. So class 9th and 10th NCERT along with the class notes, are going to be more than sufficient for this particular exam or for this particular topic on world history, right? और जैसे से move along करते रहेंगे हम, right? As we move along, so we will also see, I will also give you the names of the documentary, right? So उन documentaries के name जैसे जैसे आपको मिलते रहेंगे, you are going to actually watch those documentaries, और उससे आपके जो concepts हैं, they will become even more clearer. That is something which we need for the world history. Class 9th NCERT, class 10th NCERT, plus your class notes. So these are more than sufficient for understanding this topic on world history, right? Okay, let's move forward. So books पता लग गई हैं, और साथ साथ में I'll just write one more thing here. Every day one question on the topic will be given. It has to be written according to mains examination pattern, right? So this is how exactly we need to do. और mains examination pattern के बाद mail it to Pulkit, Agarwal, @gmail.com. Pulkit Agarwal @gmail.com. This is my mail ID, and you people will be provided a feedback as to what exactly is fine and what exactly are the changes do we need to make with the particular question, right? So that is how exactly we are going to do this topic on world history. So now let's start off with the introduction. Introduction में हम देखेंगे कि exactly world history में चीजें कहाँ से change होना start होती हैं और कैसे कैसे चीजें comes to the first topic of the UPSC, that is the American Revolution. But before American Revolution, चीजें revolution तक पहुंची कैसे? That is something which we are going to discuss, right? Okay. But before I go on to that particular introduction, what I need you people to do is write for me certain short notes. Write Consider this as the question for today. Write short notes on. Right? आज के लिए भी क्वेश्चन कर ही लेते हैं. Right? Write short notes on A. Colonialism. B. Imperialism. C. Mercantilism. D. Capitalism. E. Socialism. Right? Colonialism, imperialism, socialism. Right? So this should be more than enough. Right? So these are the things. If you want to write one more, then that is your feudalism. Right? So these are the topics which you people need to write short notes on. Right? Short notes, say between 100 and 150 words each. 100 and 150 words each. So इसके अंदर when you are writing short notes on colonialism, imperialism, mercantilism, capitalism, socialism, feudalism, right? What you people need to understand is that writing these concepts, merely writing these concepts is actually not going to help. What is exactly going to help us is understanding while we are writing कि exactly mercantilism और capitalism के बीच में क्या डिफरेंस है, colonialism और imperialism के बीच में क्या डिफरेंस है, what is socialism, right? What is feudalism? So all these concepts, when you are writing, write them in such a manner that you just understand each and everything every time you hear these particular concepts, right? So these concepts are going to be used. So these concepts are going to be used throughout the world history. That is why I'm telling you people in the first class itself that you need to be very, very thorough with these particular concepts. So in concepts से आप पूरा properly अपने आप को aware कर लो. Write short notes on these and then when you send it across to me on my email ID and then we are going to discuss these particular ideas, right? So that is how exactly we are going to do the world history topic. Okay. Karthik is actually saying, so the history revolving around the Chinese Revolution and the history of humiliation. Okay, Korean War, Vietnam War. Okay, fine. Yeah, Karthik. We will be touching upon these particular topics, that is of Chinese Revolution, that is of Vietnam War, that is of Korean War, in the whole topic of your Cold War, right? All these events, Cuban Revolution. My favorite revolutionary is Ernesto Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. So, right, so all this Cuban Revolution, Vietnam War, Chinese Revolution of Mao Zedong, all these will be studied and touched upon in the Cold War, right? When we will be doing Cold War, we will be dealing with these particular revolutions as well, Karthik, right? So that is not exactly a problem. Okay, Naveen, I'll write little downwards. Anything else anybody has to say? Okay, right? So I'll take care that I'll write little downwards. So Karthik, we will be dealing with all these concepts also, right? Okay. Now let's move forward. Right? Now let's move forward. The first topic which we need to read for world history is American Revolution. Which is 1776 until your 1783. Start of revolution, end of revolution plus America getting independence. Plus America getting independence. Okay, sorry. I think I just need to write even more little downwards. American Revolution starting of revolution, end of revolution plus American independence plus American independence. So that is what we need to do. So you see over here what is happening is that America is actually getting independent in the 18th century. So this is your 18th century, right? So this is your 18th century. But what exactly were the processes? What exactly were the events which led to the American Revolution? And what exactly did the world look like? What exactly did the world looked like before 18th century, right? 18th century से पहले exactly world कैसा दिखता था, world के अंदर क्या currents थे, क्या ideas थे, क्या processes चल रहे थे. That is something which we need to understand, right? If you people remember, Columbus accidentally discovers America, right? Columbus ने अमेरिका को accidentally discover करा था, लेकिन Columbus going on to search for America और going on to search for India, उसके पीछे क्या reasons थे कि वो exactly ships लेके निकला, उसको लगा कि उसको अब चीजें नहीं ढूंढनी चाहिए, वो सारी ideas, उसको उस सारे discoveries जो Columbus ने करे, उनके पीछे क्या processes थे, क्या ideas थे, that is what we are going to study in today's class. That is in the topic world before 18th century, right? The world before 18th century is going to lead us कि American Revolution exactly कैसे होगी, right? American Revolution में क्या क्या processes होंगे, वो हमें 18th century से पहले क्या यूरोप था और क्या पूरा world था, that is going to explain us, right? So now let's move on to the world before 18th century. World before 18th century. As I have been telling you people in modern Indian history also, that everything in history is a process. It takes a long time. It takes a long time to build a platform, to build a base for anything to happen, right? So that is something which we need to understand, right? So what we are going to start off with is the world before 18th century, right? कि exactly जो world था वो 18th century से दिखता कैसा था, right? Okay, तो इसके अंदर सबसे interesting idea जो है वो है that before 18th century, right? Before 18th century, that is the 1700s. So there were many events in Europe which occurred. The events like your Renaissance, events like your Reformation, events like your scientific revolution, events like your Enlightenment, ये सारे events धीरे धीरे करके हुए जिसकी वजह से world के अंदर the whole idea of modernity started to happen. The world started to become modern. The big industry started to develop. People started to think in a different manner, right? People started to engage themselves in trade, right? ये सारी चीजें जो हैं that happened before 18th century and they started to grow in the post 18th century, right? So ये एक interesting चीज है. It is important this period is important to understand later day इवेंट्स, राइट। ये सारी जो चीजें हैं जो बाद में अंडरस्टैंडिंग हमारे पास आ रही है, अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन हो रहा है, फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन हो रहा है, वर्ल्ड वॉर्स हो रही हैं, उन सबके जो आइडियाज हैं they are forming before your 18th century, right? So this is what we need to understand. तो सबसे पहला जो important process है before the 18th century was the development of feudalism. Was the development of feudalism in Middle Ages in Europe. Development of feudalism in Middle Ages in Europe, that is from 600 to approximately 1400 AD. 600 to 1400 AD. So that is something which we need to understand, right? That for a considerable amount of time, for approximately 900 years, feudalism was the most dominant mode of production. Feudalism was the most dominant form of production, right? तो ये एक सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है which we need to understand when we are talking about the world before 18th century कि there was this evidence or emergence of feudalism. तो okay, feudalism आया, but सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग पॉइंट यहां पर ये है that what exactly is feudalism? Feudalism exactly क्या चीज है? Feudalism किस चिड़िया का नाम है? और उसके आने से ऐसा क्या हुआ कि वर्ल्ड का जो पूरा शेप है वो पूरा का पूरा चेंज हो गया? So feudalism, as we understand, is something जहां पे the centralized control of the king, feudalism के अंदर the centralized control of the king over his kingdom starts to decline, and there is emergence of local landlords who are very, very powerful in their areas, in their local societies. Like for example, if you see in India, after the decline of the Mughal Empire in the 18th century, after the decline of the Mughal Empire in the 18th century, what happened is the centralized control of the monarch, of the king, of the Mughal king, that declined, and what increased was the power of the local governors, right? Powers of the provincial governors, that started to increase after the decline of the Mughal power, right? तो ये एक सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है। फ्यूडलिज्म में होता क्या है? दैट द सेंट्रल अथॉरिटी ऑफ द किंग, central authority of the king declines, right? Importance of local landlords start to increase. Importance of local landlords start to increase, right? तो कहीं ना कहीं जो king है, king is not able to actually control his kingdom, because either the kingdom is very, very large, right, or either he is not capable himself of controlling that particular kingdom, right? तो अब क्या है, धीरे धीरे जैसे kingdoms हैं in the medieval Europe, they began to enlarge, ठीक है, लेकिन क्या है, the kings in most of the kingdoms, they were not very strong to actually control the local landlords. Local landlords को हम equate कर सकते हैं with the zamindars of India, right? So if you see zamindars, they were also very, very powerful in their area. They controlled the idea of justice. They controlled that what exactly the commodities will be grown and what exactly will not be grown, right? ये सब चीजें exactly localized context के अंदर अब एक जमींदार decide करने लग गया. And in the same way, the local landlords in Europe, they also started to decide what exactly will be the means of production. सो एक सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग बात जो फ्यूडलिज्म में हमारे सामने निकल के आती है, दैट द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ लैंड स्टार्ट्स टू इंक्रीज. नाउ द लैंड becomes a very prized commodity. People value their lands even more and more. For them land is the most important asset, right? अब जो लैंड है वो इंपॉर्टेंट हो गई है, तो कहीं ना कहीं जो कैश फ्लो है इकोनॉमी में, दैट इज गोइंग टू डिक्रीज. वो कैसे होगा? आई विल टेल यू. अब जो लोकल लैंडलॉर्ड्स होते थे, दे फोकस्ड ओनली ऑन एग्रीकल्चर, राइट? जो इनके अपने स्टेट्स होते थे, अपनी पूरी जमीनें होती थी, इसके अंदर ये मोस्टली एग्रीकल्चर करवाते थे. और जो ट्रेडिंग एस्पेक्ट था, जो एग्रीकल्चर का जो सरप्लस था, दैट वाज नॉट एग्जैक्टली ट्रेडेड विद अदर विलेजेस. जो अदर विलेजेस थे या फिर अदर जो आसपास के एरियाज थे, उनके अंदर जो प्रोडक्ट्स प्रोड्यूस हुए हैं, उनको अब ट्रेड नहीं करा जाता. दे वर एक्चुअली रिमेनिंग विद द लैंडलॉर्ड्स ओनली. दे रिमेन्ड विद द लोकल लैंडलॉर्ड्स, राइट? तो सोसाइटी के अंदर जो कैश फ्लो है, दैट स्टार्टेड टू डिक्रीज एंड द बार्टर सिस्टम दैट स्टार्टेड टू इंक्रीज, राइट? तो कहीं ना कहीं द कैश इन द इकोनॉमी स्टार्टेड टू डिक्रीज. द विलेजेस बिकेम सेल्फ सफिशिएंट. अपना खुद का वो सामान उगाते थे और खुद ही वो वहीं पर ही कंज्यूम कर लेते. तो बाकी जो बच जाता था, that was stored with the landlords. So the importance of land, so the land became important, agriculture dominant.
India's #1 institute, Vedanta IAS Academy. Coaching for UPSC, Civil Services, State PCS for 12th and graduation student. Online smart classroom. Live class with Android app. Vedanta IAS Academy. Contact number 9911753333 or visit www.vedantaiasacademy.co.in. Branches at Rohini and Mukherjee Nagar, Delhi.
Trade decreased, therefore cash flow also decreased, right? जब ट्रेड ही नहीं होगा तो वेयर एग्जैक्टली विल बी द कैश फ्लो? दैट इज समथिंग विच वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड. और जो लोकल लैंडलॉर्ड्स होते थे, व्हाट दे आल्सो यूज्ड टू डू इज टू मेंटेन देयर पावर, दे यूज्ड टू एक्सप्लॉइट द पेजेंट्स. They used to exploit the local peasants, right? उनसे वो अपनी लैंड्स पे भी काम कराते थे, साथ साथ में अपने जो घर के काम होते थे, that also used to be done by the peasants also. घर के काम कैसे? Painting the fence of the house of the Lord, that was again a task. साथ साथ में producing wine was another task to be performed by the peasant, right? इसके अंदर एक सबसे common thing ये था that the peasant was not paid anything. He was not even given a penny. He was made to do all these things without any money, free of cost. So this is how exactly the peasant was exploited by the landlords, right? And the king also cannot do anything in this because king ka jo control tha, that was not strong at all. King was king only in legal terms, but in practical ideas, the local landlords called the shots. So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the feudalism, when we are talking about the concept of feudalism, right? So Asim says, so very interesting idea. It is similar to the federal government of the present age, Monica. Yes, in a way, it is similar to the federal government. But what we also need to understand is that the central government still has a very strong control. Central government still has a very strong control. But in feudalism, central government is only present in name. That is something which we need to understand, right? Asim, it can be also said that people worked in fight for the nobles who gave them protection and land in return. Yes, Asim, that is again a very important concept in your feudalism, right? A very important concept in feudalism. रुक गया यहाँ से. Yes, Asim, you were also correct when you said that. अब इसमें देखो, I'll just make a kind of pyramid, which is actually going to help you in understanding feudalism even better, right? अब होगा क्या? Feudalism के अंदर ये सब चीजें होती हैं. Listen. हाँ, एक और interesting point है which I need to tell you people. If you want to understand feudalism even better in a very detailed manner, yet in a very easy language, what you people can refer to is class 11th NCERT. Class 11th NCERT, right? So that gives you a very clear understanding of what exactly is feudalism, right? उसके अंदर बहुत अच्छी तरह दे रखा है. They have even made the tables in that. Yes. Now for the point which Asim was saying, right? Now for the point which Asim was actually saying is this, right? On the top is the king, right? On the top of this pyramid is the king. Below him is a local landlord, or he is also known as the earl. Below him is the military commander or knights. This is a very rough idea of feudalism, right? Below him are the peasants, right? So this local landlord is going to give assurance to the king कि मैं आपकी lands को proper रखूंगा, right? Local landlords को protection provide करते थे military terms में. These knights, or they were also known as the barons, right? Barons होते थे, ठीक है, जो military को पूरा देखते थे. And then at the last stage was your peasants or serfs, right? So this is how exactly the whole idea of feudalism developed. The basic idea was decentralization. Decentralization of power. So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the feudalism over here. ठीक है, एक तो मिडिल एजेस के अंदर feudalism develop हुआ, which we have seen, and for a even more clear understanding, class 11th NCERT is very helpful, right? Now let's go on to another idea which was there in the period before the 18th century, right? In the period before the 18th century, अब क्या है? Now the society was self-sufficient. It was more village oriented. The trade and the towns, they started to decline, and there were not many trading aspects which were going on. So there was overall a village economy which was developing, and the peasants were being exploited. And the peasants were being exploited, right? At the same time, what was also happening in the society was the church, mainly the Catholic Church, which was dominating. Catholic Church which was dominating. अब Catholic Church क्या है? It was more dominating on the evil aspect, right? इसके जो church का dominance है, they were more towards the evil ideas, right? Church was trying to maintain its dominance at the cost of the common people, right? It said that I have to maintain, चाहे कुछ भी हो जाए, anybody can die, anybody can say anything, लेकिन जो मैंने कह दिया, that will be the final thing. Like for example, Catholic Church said that the earth is flat, right? If somebody tried to question during this particular time of the Middle Ages, if somebody tried to question church, then that particular person was actually burnt alive. So nobody was allowed to actually question the ideas of church, and the church was even more powerful than the king himself, right? So this is how exactly church was controlling, and that to your Catholic Church, right? और इसमें होता क्या क्या था कि supposedly a rich man has committed crime. A rich man has committed crime. अब when a rich man has committed crime, तो उसको वो चर्च में गया प्रीस्ट के पास, and he will say, sir, I have committed crime. What to do now, right? तो अब चर्च क्या करेगा? What the church is actually going to do is, church is actually going to give him a letter saying that this particular person has confessed his crime to me. So from now on, he will be free of any crime which he has committed. और ये कैसे मिलता था letter? By paying the church some form of money. So this is how exactly the church was controlling, and what it wanted was more and more money. And in the same place, if a poor person committed crime, then that particular person was kind of punished beyond limits. तो ये एक सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग आइडिया है that how exactly the church was controlling the society. साथ साथ में, so there was also an institution known as the letters of cachet. Letters of cachet. ये letters of cachet क्या होते थे? These were given to the rich people of the society by the church. उसमें क्या होता था? Letters of cachet में you have to write the name, you have to write the crime, you have to write the date. ठीक है? वो पहले से ही rich people used to buy it from the church. ठीक है? अब क्या है? Supposedly if a person किसी को दूसरे के साथ दुश्मनी है, तो वो क्या करता था? जबरदस्ती उसका नाम लिखा, उसका क्राइम अपना बना के लिख दिया, डेट लिख दिया, and it was submitted to the church. Then the church will punish that particular person. So basically what the overall picture comes out of this particular period is that the church was dominating in a very, very evil aspect. If you see Galileo Galilei just made a very small argument, if I remember it correctly. He said that it is not the planets, it is not the sun which revolves around the earth. It is on the basically vice versa, that the earth and other planets, they revolve around the sun. He just had a little argument, you see. एक छोटा से तो चेंज करा था कि अर्थ नहीं, अर्थ के अराउंड वो सब नहीं रिवॉल्व होते, अर्थ उनके अराउंड में रिवॉल्व होते. एक छोटा सा आर्ग्यूमेंट था. एंड देन गैलीलियो गैलीलाई was punished, and I remember, if I remember correctly, he was burnt by the church, right? So this is how exactly the church was dominating in the Middle Ages in Europe, right? ये सारी चीजें थी which were there in the Middle Ages. ठीक है? तो अब क्या है? From 11th century, changes began to happen mainly in Italy. Mainly in Italy, the changes began to happen. Why? सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग पॉइंट यहां पर यह था that their people got into contact with Arabs. Right? If you see the location of Italy along the world map, you see there's a Red Sea which is going on, right? So now, because of the Crusades were the fight between the Christians and the Muslims for controlling the Holy Land of Jerusalem, right? The point is, kahin na kahin, the Italians got into kind of connection with the Arabs. Arabs were trading. Arabs were actually acting as the intermediaries between the luxury goods of Asia and Europe, right? Arabs started to kind of trade the luxury goods with that of the Europeans. And in this particular trade, the Italians were the people who kind of benefited in a very, very large manner, right? So this is what we need to understand, right? कि कहीं ना कहीं in the 11th century, now the things started to move in a right direction with the coming of the Arabic trade in between, right? तो slowly and steadily क्या है, merchants की जो influence है in Italy, that began to happen, that began to rise. अचानक से क्या होता है, in Europe in around 13th century, end of 13th century, starting of the 14th century, there happens a very, very important event in Europe known as the plague, or also known as the Black Death, right? There is an event in Europe which is known as Black Death around end of 14th and starting of 15th century. Black Death occurs, right? Black Death occurs. अब जब Black Death आती है, so what happens is that people go on to the church, because the church is dominating the religious aspects of the society. It says, I am the most powerful person in the society. चर्च सिर्फ यही नहीं करता था, चर्च और भी एक इंटरेस्टिंग काम करता था. सो चर्च को also used to tell people that we perform magic. We are someone who will be able to cure anything you people want. So now as a Black Death occurred, people started to move to the church for the solution of this problem. They told church कि भैया इसका कुछ करो. But the church was not able to do anything regarding this particular idea, right? Church failed miserably, right? So the people started to, so the faith of the people rather, that started to dwindle, that started to get lessened on the church, on its ideas, right? People now started to think कि कहीं ना कहीं the way church is controlling us is not correct. It is not practical ideas of life, right? So in this particular context, after the Black Death, there occurred a very, very important event in Europe. There occurred a very, very important event in Europe known as the Renaissance. Known as the Renaissance. Renaissance basically means rebirth. Renaissance basically means rebirth of ancient Roman and Greek ideas, right? Rebirth of ancient Roman and Greek ideas, as these were very practical in nature, right? तो कहीं ना कहीं after Black Death, what we have is the emergence of Renaissance, right? Is the emergence of Renaissance. So when we have the emergence of Renaissance, so what Renaissance actually means is, Renaissance means rebirth. Rebirth of what? Rebirth of the Roman and Greek ideas of the ancient times. Ancient times, that is before the Middle Ages, that is before 600 AD in Europe. So people in Europe before 600 AD, they were very, very practical in their mindset, right? They actually understood the situation according to the logic. But after the Middle Ages, after the decline in the trade, तो trade से decline होने से क्या हुआ? People got stagnated in a particular place. वो उसी जगह पे रह गए. They did not move as much as they used to earlier. And also the church was controlling all the educational institutions, all the ideas, all the religious institutions of the society. जो church preach करना चाह रहा था, that was being taught to the people. तो उनका mindset है, that was now very narrow. But with the Black Death, with the other events in the European history, the mindset of the people, that started to now open up. And what we have is the birth of Renaissance, of the ancient ideas, right? धीरे धीरे rebirth वाला idea जो Renaissance का है, उसमें एक और important aspect यहाँ पर जुड़ जाता है, that is humanism. That is humanism. So Renaissance slowly and steadily gets associated with humanism. Humanism is a basic idea in which you try to understand the nature of a human being, in which you try to understand the various aspects of a human being rather than focusing on the concepts which are out of this particular world. ये सोचना कि मरने के बाद क्या होगा, मरने के बाद आत्मा का क्या होता है, राइट? अगर मरने के बाद ये सब होता है तो हमें अभी से ये सब काम करने चाहिए, मरने के बाद सोल क्या हो जाती है, ये सब सोचने की चीजें कहीं ना कहीं अब दे वर ऑन द डिक्लाइन एंड द पीपल स्टार्टेड टू फोकस on the everyday aspects of life. People started to focus on the practical aspects of life. So during the time of humanism in Renaissance, arts, literature, sciences, etc., they started to develop, right? Like we have the emergence of these people such as Da Vinci, right? Leonardo Da Vinci. So he is someone who is credited with the making of the first model of the airplane, right? He is someone who used to write with both the hands simultaneously. So now the people started to think in a very, very practical manner, right? So now the people also started to question the basic aspect of religion. He exactly जो religion church हमें बता रहा है, whether it is correct or not, right? तो कहीं ना कहीं when people started to question the ideas of religion, so what happens is we have the birth of a new movement. We have the birth of a new movement known as Reformation or Reformation. We have the birth of a new movement known as Reformation. Reformation का मतलब होता है challenging the older ideas and forming new ideas in accordance with the practical aspects of life. Reformation of religious ideas according to practical needs of the society. According to the practical needs of the society, right? So slowly and steadily what we have is the emergence of Reformation. Reformation के अंदर जो सबसे important person emerge कर रहा है, that is your Martin Luther King. He is your Martin Luther King. Please do not confuse him with Martin Luther King of America, who was fighting for the aspects of racism. He is someone who is from Germany. His name is Martin Luther King. What he does is, he challenges the Catholic Church. He actually pins a 95 pages thesis in which he tells the Catholic Church to answer the questions. So when the Catholic Church fails to answer the questions of Martin Luther King, so there starts a movement in Europe which is known as Reformation, in which the religious ideas of the society are now transformed according to the needs of the society. Like for example, Catholic Church said that you people cannot trade, and even if you want to trade in the earlier times, even if you want to trade, you have to trade with us. अगर कोई merchant है, अगर supposedly if a merchant is there in Italy, he has to trade with the merchants of say Germany. So what is going to happen is the church is going to control that transaction. Church is going to be the intermediary. अगर चर्च को वो ट्रांजैक्शन सही लगेगी तो चर्च आगे करेगा, नहीं लगेगी तो चर्च इज नॉट गोइंग टू इंडल्ज. अब लेकिन रेफॉर्मेशन के अंदर ये है दैट द फ्रीडम टू ट्रेड वाज नाउ गिवन, राइट? और साथ साथ में जो चर्च की जो टीचिंग्स होते थे दैट वर मोर इन द लैंग्वेज व्हिच पीपल डिड नॉट अंडरस्टैंड, लाइक लैटिन. Now Reformation started to tell people that you need to understand the education system of the society in the native language of the people, in the vernacular. अगर अपनी मातृभाषा में people will be reading or engaging with the text, so they will be getting more and more ideas. So this is how exactly Reformation played a very, very important role in the redevelopment of the society at that particular point of time. That is something which we need to understand, right? So Renaissance is happening, Reformation is happening, right? Along with that, what we have is, along with Renaissance and Reformation, इससे होगा क्या? जो लोगों के दिमाग हैं, they will start to work, right? Slowly and steadily, people will start to work. So during Renaissance and Reformation, what we also have is a kind of scientific revolution, right? Kind of scientific revolution. अब जो scientific revolution है, that was more prominent in the 17th century. That was more prominent in the 17th century. मैंने बोला more prominent. More prominent means it kind of fully developed in the 17th century. लेकिन उससे पहले भी scientific revolution has began to happen. और इस scientific revolution की वजह से क्या हुआ? The practical bent of mind, the scientific bent of mind started to come out. What was the result? Was shipbuilding. In shipbuilding got better. Magnetic compass developed. साथ साथ में the maps etc. developed. Geographical knowledge enhanced. Geographical knowledge enhanced, right? So these were some of the scientific revolution. और भी बहुत सारे थे, but these were some of the scientific revolution which happened at this particular time, right? This started to happen from the 15th, 16th and reached its peak in the 17th century, and that is something which we need to understand. And as the scientific revolution was happening, right, as the scientific revolution was happening, simultaneously there was another thing which began to occur, which was known as the Age of Discovery, which is known as the Age of Discovery. End of 15th century and starting of 16th century, right? End of 15th century and starting of 16th century was the time when the age of discovery began to happen. People started to look for new trade routes. They now started looking for new places to actually earn the money. They now wanted to get more and more money. They wanted to make huge profits. वो सब profits में exactly help करेगा the shipbuilding, the magnetic compass, the maps, the geographical knowledge. All this is actually going to help in the age of discovery. Age of discovery के अंदर scientific revolution तो exactly आपकी help कर ही रहा है. उसके साथ साथ what is also happening is that the political situation of Europe at that particular point of time actually encouraged people to look for new trade routes. New trade routes. अब क्या है? The trade route of Red Sea, right? The trade route of Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea in Europe, that was controlled by Italy, and Italy was not letting anyone else to actually come in that particular trade. अब लोग कह रहे हैं यार यही सारा थोड़ी ना प्रॉफिट लेके जाएंगे. With the trade of Asia, with the trade of Arabs, हमें भी तो नया प्रॉफिट चाहिए, हमें भी तो नई नई प्लेसेस ढूंढने का मौका मिलना चाहिए. So what they started to do is they started to find alternative routes. They started to go on voyages to find alternative routes, and in this particular process what we have is the finding of Columbus. Columbus was actually someone who was financed by the King of Portugal, right? And he wanted to discover India for its riches in spices, for its riches in textiles, right? Everybody has heard about the luxurious products of India, right? So now they wanted to trade with India. So Columbus also started on a voyage to India. But as soon as Columbus started on a voyage to India, what happened is, instead of reaching India, he reached America. He reached America instead of reaching India. So when he reached America instead of reaching India, so what we have is the discovery of a new place on the world map known as the America. To be very precise, he first of all reached the islands of the Caribbean. Caribbean is the same place from where these people like Chris Gale from these people like Andre Russell, all these cricketers, West Indies, right? He first of all reached West Indies slowly and steadily. Then other people started to reach the American continent, right? They started to reach the American continent, right? So when Columbus reached America in 1492, what happens is, as he went there, so he was about to reach the shore of the Caribbean of the Americas. तो वहां से क्या हुआ, अचानक से लोगों को वहां के जो नेटिव्स थे, who were known as the Red Indians, we should not be using this term Red Indians because it is a racially abusive term. So I will be using the First Nations. So when the people of America, native people of America, they saw Columbus, right? When they saw Columbus, तो उन्हें लगा कि Columbus was standing on the ship. उन्हें लगा कोई अलग सा इंसान आ गया, कोई भगवान आ गया. उन्होंने कभी पहले शिप तो देखा नहीं था, तो अचानक से वो आए, कलम्बस के पैरों में गिर गए, ये सब हो गया. सो कलम्बस ने उन्हें कुछ गिफ्ट्स दिए. कलम्बस ने उन्हें फेदर दिए, फेदर कैप्स दिए, छोटे मोटे जो नॉर्मल गिफ्ट्स हैं वो दे दिए उन नेटिव पीपल को. नेटिव पीपल इन रिटर्न दे एक्चुअली गेव हिम gold and silver, because for them gold and silver had no value, but this feather cap and all these had immense value. अब कोलंबस को लगा भाई ये आ गया टाइम. सो कोलंबस spread this whole idea that there is huge amounts of gold and silver in America. So the people started to move towards America, like the people like the Spanish people, people like the French, people like the Britain. They slowly and steadily started to go towards Americas, right? So when they were going towards America, they wanted to spread their religion. They wanted to actually spread to get the gold, that is the money, right? For spreading gold, for spreading the God and for getting the gold. These two becomes the basic motive of the European people via this age of discovery. So when America was once discovered, the Europeans started to exploit it for its gold and silver, but slowly and steadily British emerged as the most powerful player in America, and it managed to kick off all other European powers from that particular continent, and Britain was able to capture 13 colonies in America and becomes the supreme colonial power over there, right? So this is how exactly Britain reached America, captured 13 colonies, used its gold for trading with India, with Asia, right? So this is how exactly the conquest of America happened with the advent of the Europeans in that particular continent, right? So I'll put a full stop to the introduction. This is all I had for today. In the tomorrow's class, we are going to start off with the first topic, American Revolution from 1776 till 1783. In that, we are going to see कि अमेरिका में revolution exactly क्यों हो रहा है and what were the consequences of that particular revolution, right? So this is it for today's class, right? So if you have any doubts, any queries, you people can actually mail it to my email ID, that is pulkitagarwal34@gmail.com, right? I'll just take the question. Dipayan, Columbus was originally from Spain, but his voyage was actually financed by Portugal King Henry the Navigator, right? That is what we need to understand. Knights were controlled by the earls, yeah. Barons, they were also known as Kshitij. Kshitij also has another question, but doesn't the king has a divine origin? Yes, Kshitij, the king has a divine origin, but the point is how strong that divine origin is. That is what we also need to understand. King had divine origin, that is good, that is for the common people. But the people who are in the political aspect of the society, वो भी देखना exactly उतना ही important है कि whether they respected the divine origin or not. So once the European society began to move towards the agricultural production mode, so divine origin वाला जो पूरा का पूरा idea है, that was only in theory. People stopped actually respecting, people in power, they stopped respecting this whole idea, right? वैसे the divine origin remained. even the divine origin was seen during the time of French Revolution in 1789, right? That is something which we need to understand, right? तो ये एक सबसे interesting idea है.